Okay, let's talk about the Bible. It's not really one single book. It's more like a whole library, a collection of ancient texts that completely shaped our world. Everything from art to law to the lives of literally billions of people. And yeah, it can seem really complex, maybe even a little contradictory at times. But what if there's a single epic story that ties it all together?
So, what is that single story that connects this whole ancient library of books? Because let's be honest, when you first open it up, it can look like kind of a jumble, right? You've got history, poetry, prophecy, all mixed in. But woven through every single page is one epic narrative. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. We're going to find that one unified story of the Bible.
All right, so our story kicks off, as you might expect, right at the very beginning. We're diving into the book of Genesis. And what's so important here is that Genesis doesn't just open the Bible. It actually sets up the core problem that the rest of the entire narrative, we're talking thousands of pages, is going to try to solve.
So, just so we're all on the same page, the Bible is basically split into two main parts. You've got the Old Testament, which contains the sacred writings of ancient Judaism, and then the New Testament, which zeroes in on the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Our story starts way back in the Old Testament, in Genesis, with this picture of a perfect world. God creates this universe filled with harmony and purpose, and right at the top, the pinnacle of it all, is humanity, made in God's own image. It sounds pretty ideal, right? Well, as you can probably guess, that perfection is not going to last long.
And this is the critical turning point. We see a shift from that ideal state to a broken one. A human rebellion against God, you've probably heard it called the fall, completely shatters that initial harmony. This one act introduces sin, conflict, suffering, this deep separation from God into the world. And this brokenness, this becomes the central problem that the entire rest of the Bible is dedicated to solving. Okay, so the world is now fundamentally broken. How does the story respond to that? Well, the rest of the Old Testament pretty much unfolds as this long and, let's be honest, often difficult history of God working to guide humanity back. We see a series of covenants, laws, and prophets, all meant to kind of light the way.
And this all happens through a few huge key events. You've got the story of Noah, where God makes a covenant, a promise after the great flood. It's a symbol of redemption. Then you have the Exodus, this incredible story where Moses leads the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, a huge turning point. After that, at Mount Sinai, they're given the law, the Ten Commandments, as a moral code, a guide for how to live. But here's the thing. Humanity just keeps falling short. So prophets start to show up. These are messengers who warn about what's going to happen if things don't change, but they also point to a future hope, the coming of a Messiah who would finally, once and for all, fix what was broken.
So after centuries and centuries of these covenants, laws, and prophets, the whole narrative just takes this massive turn. We pivot from the Old Testament to the New, and the story goes from this wide, sprawling history to zooming in, laser-focused, on a single figure, a person who is presented as the long-awaited answer to that ancient problem of brokenness we talked about. And that central figure, of course, is Jesus Christ. The writers of the New Testament present him as the absolute fulfillment of all those prophecies we saw in the Old Testament. But what's so interesting is that he doesn't show up with a new, longer list of rules. Nope. Instead, he brings this totally radical new message. It's all about love, forgiveness, and a deep internal transformation of the human heart. And right at the very heart of his teaching is this incredibly simple, yet totally profound principle that we now call the Golden Rule. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Think about that. It was a revolutionary idea. It completely reframes morality. It's not about a list of don'ts, it's about empathy. It makes empathy the bedrock of how we should interact with each other. And this core ethic shows up in his other transformative teachings too. You have love God and love your neighbor. And then there's the famous Sermon on the Mount, where he lays out the principles of this kingdom of God. He describes a completely new kind of kingdom, one where it's the meek, the merciful, and the peacemakers who are actually blessed. It's a total radical re-envisioning of what power and value even mean. And the goal of all of this? To restore the world to that original harmony we saw back in the garden.
But his teachings were only one part of the solution. The narrative is now building to its absolute climax. This is where the story presents the ultimate answer to that problem of human brokenness, the one that was set up all the way back in Genesis. And that ultimate solution comes through the crucifixion. Now, in the Christian story, Jesus' death isn't seen as just a tragedy. It's viewed as a purposeful sacrifice. It's presented as the one act that could absorb all the sin and brokenness of the world, finally bridging that separation from God that started all the way back in the Garden of Eden. But death does not get the final word in this story. 3 days later, we have the resurrection. And this event right here is presented as the turning point of the entire Bible. It's framed as God's ultimate victory over death itself. It's the sign that the brokenness has finally been overcome, and it offers forgiveness for everything in the past and the promise of a totally new life for the future.
So with that central problem, that brokenness finally resolved, the story moves into its final act. Because the resurrection wasn't meant to be an endpoint. No, it was the launching point for a brand new global mission. So what happens next? Well, in the aftermath, Jesus' followers come together to form a new community, which becomes known as the early church. And this new community is given a new mission, a new mandate, one that's going to ripple out from Jerusalem and, frankly, change the entire course of world history.
And this new mandate has a name, the Great Commission. It's a direct command. Go into all the world and make disciples, teaching them to obey his commands. And this directive right here is what ignites the global spread of Christianity, a movement that is, of course, still going strong today.
So there you have it. When you step back and look at the whole thing, not as a collection of separate books, but as one single story, this really clear narrative arc just snaps into focus. It's a story of redemption. It starts with a perfect world, confronts a broken one, and traces this long, epic journey toward restoration, all culminating in a healed relationship with God. And the influence of this one story, it's just undeniable. It echoes through our art, our laws, our ethics, our entire culture. Which brings us to the final question. And this isn't just for our explainer, it's really for you to think about. How do these ancient stories, this narrative of brokenness and redemption, continue to shape the world we all live in today?